I've been thinking about that the last few days.
All right.
You're not that part of the alphabet anymore. You're part of the Alpha Omega alphabet.
Amen.
So, Alphabet Man is because of the X, L, G, B, T, Q, P, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. And I even added E-I-E-I-O, no. I have to keep to my notes because if any of you watch my show, you know that if I get down a rabbit hole, you're here all night. Let's see how this works. Oops. Alright. So my entire life has been a lesson, and it's been a lesson on intimacy. And a lot of us, hey Jason, a lot of us, we believe, even if we don't think about it, we believe subconsciously that intimacy means sex. And it doesn't. Intimacy is not sex. Intimacy is a close familiarity or fellowship, a nearness and friendship. God and Adam were intimate. King David and Jonathan were intimate. Jesus and his apostles and his disciples were intimate. None of them were engaged in any kind of sexual activity. However, if you look up, if you Google David, Jonathan, intimate, on the first list that comes up, only one of the results will say that David and Jonathan were not engaging in a homosexual relationship. All the rest of the results say they were. So my entire life was a lesson on intimacy. Because I just like we all do, we go to the mall and what do we see? We see intimate apparel. And you're not wearing none of that stuff to have a familiar fellowship with your brother or sister. Mm-hmm. So, my father, he took his life before I was born. So that led me down the road of seeking intimacy. I was looking for that male affirmation, for that male confirmation in my life. And there happened to be some men, a family friend, a neighbor, strangers, who took advantage of that desire for intimacy. They took advantage of that, of me seeking male affirmation. And I was molested numerous times. It actually got to the point where I associated that type of activity with love. So here I was thinking that I was experiencing love, and this was male affirmation. But when I looked at the women in my life, I would see that they got the same kind of attention, but it was more often, and it looked more pleasing to me and more acceptable. So I figured, well, I must be meant to be a girl. So that's when I set out on my acting out my thoughts and feelings. The more feminine I acted, the more attention I received. Albeit negative attention, we all know that to children, attention is attention, whether it's positive or negative. So I was just looking for some type of attention. I had a mother that loved me very much, but my mother didn't know Jesus. So we weren't raised in a Christian home. So I started sneaking out at night and running away and hanging out all night. And at 13 years old, I overdosed on pills. And I was already drinking by then. And I was already doing other drugs. And I was hanging out with, like in Atlantic City, New Jersey, I'm hanging out with actual prostitutes and pimps. And I'm like 11, 12 years old. I'm engaging in activity under the boardwalk with whoever, homeless people. It didn't matter to me because that was what I thought love was. And I was on a mission to find love. And I was going to find that love one way or another. Well, when I overdosed on pills, I blacked out. And and I gave up a lot of information when I blacked out to my mother and my auntie and whoever was in the room. And when my mother heard all of the things that I was doing coming out of my mouth, she had to get me out of Atlantic City, and so she took me to Philadelphia. It was her only option, but for me, that was out of the frying pan into the fire, because it was like Atlantic City, the LGBT movement in Philadelphia was like the one in Atlantic City, just on steroids. It was just huge. And so at 14 years old, my mother said to me, she said, you know what, I had a son. I didn't have a daughter. I named you David. You are David. You will not dress like that. You will not act like that. You won't even do those things. And if that's what you want to do, there's the door. And at 14 years old, I chose the door. At 14 years old, I lived on the streets of Philadelphia. At 14 years old, I was prostituting my body on the corners of Philadelphia, on the streets of Philadelphia. At 14 years old, I was dressing like a girl. I was buying female hormones, just like I would buy my drugs, and injecting myself with hormones. At 14 years old, if I wasn't selling myself or giving myself away, I was trading myself for drugs or alcohol or a place to sleep. And at 14 years old, I was HIV positive. At 14, I don't know about most of you what your goals were at 14, but my goal at 14 years old was to be the best hooker I could be. That was it. That was my only goal, my only aspiration. So from 14 on, I was in and out of juvenile detention center. I was in and out of the county jail as an adult, and then in and out of prison as an adult. And now I don't ever show my photos of the old me to say, oh, look at me. Because I've actually had people in a church building come up to me afterwards and say, oh, but you were so pretty. And I'm like, what? I show them to show and prove exactly what God can do, because a lot of people think that they're too far gone, or I don't know, my granddaughter is too far gone. She's done had her breasts removed, she's living as a man, she's got a beard, she's too far gone. No, she's not. Because a lot of people thought I was too far gone too. A lot of people thought I was too far gone. And the more I lived, see, I didn't just live a lie. I actually became the lie. And so every waking moment of every single day for me was a lie. That's one of my actual booking docket cards, they call them. And that was when I got booked into the county jail for prostitution. And I told them my name, and they still put female on my docket card. I told them my name was David, and they still put me in a cell with females. This was my life. This was all I knew. Until, they were my favorite two words in the Bible, but God. So my last time in prison, my second was my last. I'm on the rec yard, and I'm a male. I look like a female, I dress. And I'm on the rec yard in a man's prison, because I'm a man. And I'm, as if being, looking the way I look wasn't attention-grabbing enough, I'm cheerleading on the rec yard for the guys playing basketball. And there's a correctional officer, and he's looking at me, and he's like, and I'm thinking, okay, this dude, he's going to be a problem. And he says, you, come here. And I bounce up to him, and I'm like, what? And he says, what's your name? I said, my name is Paige. He said, no, that's a girl's name. What's the name your mama gave you? I said, David. He said, well, David, do you know that God didn't create you to be this way? Very matter-of-factly, no hesitation. And so I was offended, I was hurt. I was angry. How dare he say those horrible things to me and hurt my feelings? And I said to him, of course he did. Look at me. I do this well. He said, no, he didn't even intend for you to look like that. And he said, I'm going to tell you this every day because I can. And he did. He told me every single day, God didn't create you to be that way. It got to the point where I'd see him and I'd be like, I know God didn't create me to be that way. But I wanted to talk to him. You know, we all called him Bishop because he preached to everybody, from inmate to correctional officer. He didn't care. He treated everybody the same, which is why I received from him so well, because I saw him as a peer. I saw him as an equal, and I never should have in that situation. But because he treated nobody any different, I saw him as a peer. And so I wanted to talk to him. People would be like, oh, here comes Bishop. I'm out of here. I'm like, go ahead. I want to talk to him. Because I'd stand in front of that man, and I'd look at him, and I'd look in his eyes, and I knew there was no doubt in my mind that that man loved me, and he loved me true and pure. It was the first time in my life that a man loved me, truly loved me. And he loved me enough to offend me. And he loved me enough to offend me with the truth. Truth in love, because we love, and that's only possible because we are first loved. Whew. It's always like the first time. I love to say that when I got out of prison, that I just became this man of God and just wanted to just preach and tell the whole world about Jesus, but that wasn't the case. Like a dog, I returned to my vomit and added a couple more sins. I started selling dope and gambling and a whole lot of other things. And in 2008, I was stricken down with osteoporosis, which a lot of people don't realize what it is, but it's an elderly woman's disease. And my bone density was almost gone. My bones were brittle. And at first, I was starting to get hunched over and would need a cane to walk. And then after a couple months, I needed a walker just to get around. I was in excruciating pain. They had me on Oxycontin, oxycodone, hydrocodone, all kinds of stuff, morphine. And I was topping that all off with street drugs, just wanting to relieve the pain. And that was due to all of the female hormones that I had put into my body. Because, you know, whether you're a woman or a man, synthetic hormones are synthetic and they don't belong in your body. So we have exactly what we need in our body. That's why we take care of our bodies. So I'm in excruciating pain. I'm dragging myself around. But even that didn't stop me from wanting to go out to the club and to the casino and to the parties, even to the parks where unmentionable things happen when it gets dark. You know, here I am dragging myself around on a walker just to be able to participate in these activities and satisfy the lust of my flesh. Nothing could stop me. Well, until God. Because in 2009, the Lord struck me down with full-blown AIDS. And I want to clarify that because a lot of people will be like, that's right, amen. AIDS is God's punishment. No, it's not. AIDS was my recompense. It was my reward for my choices. That's what it was. AIDS is also the reward and the recompense for a lot of IV drug users that I know. So we reap what we sow. We truly do. Full-blown AIDS, no immune system. My immune system, if anybody knows medical terms, my T cells were in the thousands, and then 11, and then 0 within weeks. I had no immune system. My viral load was in the hundreds of thousands per part, which is, my doctor's office had never seen a viral load that high. I was infected with numerous strains of HIV because for over 20 years, I did not practice safe sex. I was an angry, bitter, confused person. And when I found out that I was HIV positive at 14 years old, I went to my peers and I said, I'm HIV positive, what am I going to do? And they said, so are we. And the one that gave it to you didn't care, so don't you care who you give it to. And another one of my transgender peers said, take out as many as you can. I was 14, angry, how dare my mother not accept my confusion. How dare I have to do what I'm doing and live on the streets? Oh, I'm going to get as many as I can. And that's what I did for over 20 years. I used to think about all the ones that I possibly could have infected. I actually knew a few that I did. Until a young man that I infected, he was 14 years old when I infected him. At 18 years old, I knew he was infected. He was with his girlfriend and his newborn baby. The last time I seen him, I had just gotten saved. And I moved away from New Jersey and up to Maine. So I needed to go somewhere where nobody knew me, because I was an advocate for the LGBT movement. I was on the floats for clubs. I represented nightclubs on their floats. But I contacted this young man because after about 2 or 3 years of carrying all this weight around, a pastor said to me, so David, God's grace isn't good enough. His grace isn't sufficient for you. God's forgiveness, the cross ain't enough for you. I said, what are you talking about? Of course God's grace is sufficient for me. He said, well, obviously it's not, because you are still carrying around all this extra luggage of what you've done to people. And I thought about it, and I thought I went home that night, I got on my face and gave it all to the Lord and surrendered it all and said, you know what? It's all in your hands now. Because I am forgiven. However, it wasn't until I actually got to meet with this young man face to face in 2016, 6 years into my walk, when he told me that his girlfriend was infected, but his baby wasn't, and he was. And he forgave me. And he said to me, we reap what we sow, David. You know, and so, I don't know how I got on that story, but that's one of them rabbit holes because I'm not looking right here. Okay. So here I am, I'm on my deathbed. The doctor put hospice in place. He said, you don't even have to take the HIV medicine anymore, David, because there's no hope. You will not survive this. I had infections in my brain, infections in my blood. I was having several mini strokes daily. And so they put a hospital bed in my bedroom, and they came out and gave me all the little plastic nicety furniture so you can die in peace kind of thing. And I laid in that bed, and I knew I was dying. I accepted that I was dying. I accepted that my life was over. I never in a zillion years would have thought that I had anything outside of that moment, of that time, being in that hospital bed. And there was a Bible sitting on my nightstand. I used it as a coaster. And it was a Bible that my mother sent to me actually when I was in prison. And the only thing I ever read was Psalms. I went to the Bible guy on the block and I was like, I got a Bible, where do I go? He's like, oh, Psalms is inspirational. I must have been reading the imprecatory Psalms because it was not very inspirational. So in my footlocker it went, but it went home with me and it went on my nightstand and I used it as a coaster. And as I laid in that bed, I knew two things. I knew I was afraid to die. And I'm the kind of person, I want to know why. Why? Everything, I want to know why. So I want to know why I'm afraid to die. And it's because I didn't want to go to hell. I knew at that moment, laying in that bed, that I was on my way to hell. There was no doubt in my mind. I knew that I was going exactly where I deserved to go. I also knew that God wasn't sending me to hell, but he was honoring my choice to go there.
Amen.
And that's what it was. It was my choice. It would have been my reward. And I picked up that Bible. And I opened it up. And the very first verse I ever read in the New Testament was Romans 1:27. I didn't start at the beginning. I just opened it up and went like this. And I was like, ooh. And likewise also the men leaving the natural use of the woman burned in their lust one toward another. Men with men working that which is unseemly and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error. Giving up the natural use. At that very moment, that one little passage, it destroyed my whole foundation that I ever stood upon. Every argument I ever had, because it didn't matter. See, I didn't know I was living in sin. I didn't know the things I was doing was sin, but I knew that something wasn't quite right. I knew my actions, a lot of things that I did, I knew they were wrong. But I didn't know I was living in sin. I just knew that something wasn't quite right, ever. But that one passage said, not only was I living sinfully, I was living unnaturally. I was in direct opposition to God's very intention. Just the thought he had of creating male and female. I was in direct opposition to that very thought. And I knew it at that very moment. I dove into the word. When they say that this is the living word, that this is alive, this is alive. And I dove in and I just wanted to absorb all that I could absorb and just find all that I could find. And I began praying and I began talking to Jesus and I began asking him to take the reins, and I never asked him to heal me. I never asked him to allow me to have any more days or extra days or heal me or anything. The only thing I ever asked him for weeks was not to allow me to go to hell. Because I knew that's where I was going. Well, one morning, I woke up and I'm in excruciating pain. I'm real confused because not only am I in excruciating pain, but I'm experiencing something new and different. And I'm in all this pain from my bones to the boils on the outside of my body. I don't know if I got to that. I didn't just have a bump here and there. I had Job boils. I had huge boils all over my body from the infections in my body trying to fight their way out of my body. And I was confused because here I was in all this pain, but I had some joy in my heart. I had peace. For the first time in my life, I knew what rest meant. And I was like, what is going on? And I realized at that moment, I was no longer afraid to die. Because I knew I was not going to hell. And I called out to God. I'm ready. Take me home. Take me. Get me out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to feel like this. I just don't want to be. Just take me. I said, but I have one request. I said that through my death, somebody will come to know you. I was thinking of my mom. I was being selfish. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of my mother. But I said, through my death, just let you get the glory. And so from that moment, I started like getting up out of the bed and wanting to get up. And I'm getting up, and then I was like standing up straight. And I hadn't stood up straight for probably 2 years at that point. And then I'm using a cane, and then no cane. And then I'm in the kitchen, like walking around the house, and I'm in the kitchen one day, and I was making toast. And I look over, and I see like my mom and my sister and my niece, and they're all like, and they're like looking at me like, this is his last burst of energy. He's out of here any minute. And they were wrong. But that was it. Hospice, oh, David, we can't come back out here because you're not dying. See you, peace. I mean, really, So I go to my nurse practitioner, and she says to me, she said, David, Dr. Z is not coming in this office. She said, because he can't give you a scientific explanation for what's happening with you. I said, well, what's happening with me? And she said, never have we seen a viral load as high as yours in this office. We've seen, in text, and we know there's plenty of other cases, but not in this office. And we've never known one to actually survive. She said, but he won't come in because we've never even heard of a viral load so high going undetectable within just a few weeks. And I was like, well, undetectable, what's that mean? Am I negative? And she's like, then the scientist in her came out, and she says, no. It's once positive, always positive. You're just undetectable, and we just can't detect the virus in your system. I said, well, I'll take that. I'll take full-blown AIDS right now. I'll take stage 4 cancer right now. I'll take anything you can throw at me because I'm not who and what I was. I may not be who I'm going to be, but I'm not who and what I was. So you can throw anything you want at me. Give me anything. Because the old man is gone. And we prayed. She used to ask me if I wanted to pray all the years I was going to her, and I'd be like, well, no, what do I want to pray to your God for when he did this to me? Because we're always looking for, we love to play the blame game. So the blame game is good. But I'm going to always end up going back to intimacy. Because when I look into Webster's 1828, it says that intimacy means close familiarity or fellowship, nearness and friendship. It's a bond, personal bond. But when I Googled intimacy, it said an intimate act, especially sexual intercourse. Not an intimate act, sexual intercourse, especially sexual intercourse. really got me to thinking about what intimacy was. And I started really looking at intimacy. You know, for 9 years of my, well, I'll be going on 10 years. The end of this year will be 10 years that I've been the new man. That God honored my request, by the way, because David died and was reborn, and now he is being glorified.
That's right.
It's probably easy for me because I accepted that my life was over almost 10 years ago. And because I accepted that my life was over, I know that every breath I have belongs to my Father. But about 6 months, well, the end of last year, I went up to my room and I got on my face. I said, Lord, look, it's been over 9 years. Am I not faithful? Can you remove this attraction from me? I don't want this attraction. And you know, it was almost like he just downloaded it or placed it inside of me and said, you want me to remove something that I placed in you because you've misidentified it? Because you've identified this desire for intimacy, which is part of your nature, part of your characteristic. It's in your design. Because you've identified it as an attraction, you want me to remove it. And I just started pulling out all my notes on intimacy and just praying on it and interceding. And I'm just like, there's so much more here. And there really is. Because we all have been telling, me, for 9 years, I've been telling youth and young men and young women on the streets that this desire, this feeling that they have is unnatural, and that's a lie. It's not unnatural. It's the way they're identifying it and acting upon it that's unnatural. Intimacy is a God-given characteristic. It's part of our design. It's like our heterosexuality. There is nothing outside of our heterosexual design. Because just because I grasped onto homosexuality and some grasped onto drugs and some lying and some promiscuity and whatever, it does not change their heterosexual design. And I know that was a fact because that came from the Holy Spirit. When a homosexual, quote-unquote, pastor said to me, David, it's wonderful what the Lord has done for you, just maybe you were never really homosexual. And I looked at him and I said, well, duh, neither are you. You're heterosexual by design. You are not what you decide to do. And that's where it all comes from, the intimacy. We have young boys out here that are desiring intimacy with men. But culture and society and school are all teaching them that it's not anything other than attraction. So if it's an attraction, it must be sexual and or romantic. I could go through all of the genders that they're teaching, and each definition contradicts the last and the next. Because it's all garbage. And it's so easy. It's just like this drag queen story time. They used to have right on their website that their target audience is 3 to 8-year-olds. Why? Because those are the most impressionable years. That's it. The enemy is after the children. If he doesn't get them in the womb, and he's been succeeding at that too, if he doesn't get them in the womb, he's going to get them right outside the womb. Never in our history have we had so many young people running around here not sure of who or what they are. Never. Never have so many little girls wanted to be boys and little boys wanting to be little girls. And then never have anybody ever said, well, I'm not either. I am just. That's it. I mean, I met somebody that said, well, I'm cisgender. Or no, I think it was binary. I'm binary. I was like, okay, what's that mean? And he says, well, the medical community labeled me a male when I was born. And I identify as a male. I'm like, well, it's because you're a male. Because you were created a male. You know, the arguments that they have don't make any sense. They're not logical. When I was blessed to go into Worthington Kilbourne High School twice, each time I was able to say to them, hey, tell me one thing. What? How could I have felt like a woman when I don't know what a woman feels like? And they go, I asked a young lady a week or two ago in Bangor, Maine. She said she feels like a man. I said, okay, I'll leave you alone if you can answer one question sufficiently. She said, what? I said, how do you know that you feel like a man? How do you know what a man feels like? And she just kind of looked up in the air, and then her mouth went, and then she looked at me, and she said, that's a good one. I don't know. I said, well, now you're stuck with me. And we talked for probably another hour, hour and a half. And I see her all the time. Whenever I go into Bangor, I see her. She loves when she says, hey, David, how are you? Because it's all about finding hope. And when I went to the Columbus Pride Parade last year, I didn't go this year, but when I went last year, it was my first Pride Parade since being saved. And I was scared to go all these years because I was afraid of what I was going to be confronted with, or I was afraid somebody was going to stab me or shoot me or gas me or something. But when I got there, they embraced me. I had two lesbians come up, and one was like, can I have a hug? Can I hug you? I said, sure. And I hugged her. And she goes, wow, you get the best hugs. I said, well, that's because I'm a man and you're a woman, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And she looked at her friend real quick, and her friend had no breasts, no shirt on, kind of looked like a male. And her friend went, well, can I have a hug too then? I said, absolutely. And I gave her a hug, and she goes, wow, you really do give the best hugs. And I said, because contrary to popular belief, I'm a man and you're a woman, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But that opened a door. And she actually talked to me. She told me her story. She gave me like details. You know, if there's one thing that the Lord has taught me in this last year, it's that I'm not out there to speak at people. I'm there to speak to them. The Lord has so clearly given me the mission that I'm supposed to establish a relationship with them. Because if we don't establish a relationship with somebody, you cannot preach to them. I met a young lady at that Pride Parade that we hung out a few times, like once a week. We talked on the phone a lot. And she called me about 3 months into our friendship, and she said, David, would you pray for me? I said, for what? She said, well, I kind of fell at work. They don't know. I might need a hip replacement, whatever. I was like, well, no. And she said, well, what do you mean, no? You're a Christian. You're supposed to pray for me. I said, well, a good hip ain't going to do you no good in hell. I said, I pray for the hope of your eternal salvation every day. But I never could have said that to her had I not established a relationship with her. And so the key is establishing relationships with the broken. And that's not just the LGBT. That's everybody. You know, there's a whole lot of programs out there that they feel can set people free. But until they meet Jesus, they'll never be made free, and they won't be free indeed. You know, I could have gave up. I know two ex-homosexuals that gave up homosexuality just because they felt like it was wrong and it was unnatural. But they're not Christian. and they don't want to be Christian. And so I tell them the same thing I tell the ones who are in homosexuality. Well, you still need to be introduced to Jesus. And that's our commission. Our commission is to introduce people to Jesus the Christ through our words, our deeds, and our actions. That's it. You know, and to demolish all the lies, demolish all of the things that they're doing. They're snatching words. You know, I was not gay when I was a homosexual. Okay? I'm gay now because I have the source of joy that dwells within my heart. Okay? I'm now gay. Yeah, imagine walking out in front of a congregation, and I did it in Pickerington, and going, "Thank you, Jesus, for making me gay." And they were all like, maybe we got the wrong guy. And then I had to explain it. But we need to start taking back what the enemy has stolen from us. You know, the opposite of homosexuality is not heterosexuality. And we need to stop speaking about it like it is. When somebody will say, well, you know, I guess we could talk about straight people sinning too. There's only straight people. There are only heterosexual people. It's by design. That's through God's lens. If you're a child of God's, then you better look through his lens and see things through his lens. Because the first time I was attracted to women, I walked into a store, and it was about 4 years into my walk, and I walked into a store and I saw this woman, and she was probably dressed like I used to dress when I was working. And I looked at her, and I not only had like an emotional or a mental thing, but like a physical attraction. And it scared the nonsense out of me, and I ran out of the store, and I got in my car, and I started crying. And I'm like, Lord, I don't want to see women the way I saw men. I don't want to look at women in the manner that I looked at men. I want to see women through your lens. I want to see women the way you see women. And it was gone. And now I see women for the beautiful gifts that they are. Whether they're encased in light or whether they're encased in darkness. Because if they're encased in darkness, guess what? It's hopeful because they can be encased in light. You know, and so that's what it's all about. I don't even know what time it is. I'm going.
Keep going.
You know, the key is teaching. The key is teaching children and those around us. We have so many people that are around us, our family members, that will be like, well, my friend is bisexual. We accept that. We're like, oh, okay. Instead of, sweetheart, there is no such thing as bisexual. And when they say, what? You say, well, if you're a man and you lay with a man, and it doesn't matter if one of them men think they shoulda, coulda, woulda, wanna be, can pay to be, dress up as, feel like, or pretend to be the opposite sex, they're still a man. So you're guilty of the sin of homosexuality. A woman lays with a woman, you're guilty of the sin of homosexuality. A man lays with a woman outside of wedlock, you're guilty of the sin of fornication. Sometimes adultery, but there's no such thing as bisexual. It doesn't exist. It's another one of the words. Same thing with transgender. It doesn't exist. It's homosexuality. It's the sin of homosexuality. It's confusion. It's a whole lot of things, but it's not no transgender. Because transgenderism is homosexuality in distress. Not in a dress. In distress. That's what it is. And that's all it is. It's broken people that are screaming. And they can't scream any louder at us because they're walking around with pink hair and makeup on and nails and miniskirts on, and little boys are shaving their bodies and taking puberty blockers and hormone pills. They can't scream any louder for us to reach out. We don't want to reach into the flames because we're afraid we might get burned. Burn me, because my life ended in 2009. Every breath I have belongs to Him. That should be the way all of us are. It doesn't matter if we were on our deathbed or not. Once He touched you and he washed you clean, and you became a new creature, that's it. Your life is dedicated to him and his will, his work. Not building your own ministry, not working on your career. The enemy has built an empire. We, being the hands and feet and elbows, should be tearing that empire down and building up the kingdom and furthering the kingdom. That's all we should be doing. And there's so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to do it. Because I'm not one to tell everybody, come on, grab a sign, you're going out with me and we're going to the parade. I'm not one for that. Because you know what? If that's not your function, I don't want you out there. If your function is at home in your prayer closet or on your knees or on your face, interceding for me while I'm out there, then I want you to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. If your function is out there feeding the homeless, you can go feed the homeless and still talk truth and still tell them the truth. And you can still quash and kill any lies that they believe just because you're interacting with them. Fire and Brimstone is a documentary film that I would not suggest giving to the lost, but it is about my life. And originally when it was done, we thought we wanted to reach the unsaved and to give hope and wake up the church, because half of the church is sleeping. So Fire and Brimstone is available on my website. It's 2 hours long, but I tell you, it doesn't feel like 2 hours. I have books, testimonial books. They're on the back table for donation. They're also available on the website. And for anyone who doesn't know, Monday through Thursday, I do a live stream broadcast. And it live streams on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, all at the same time, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 30 minutes. Talk about all kinds of different stuff, especially about, because since I've been back in Maine, because I left Ohio last month and I'm back in Maine, and so since I've been back in Maine, I've just been trying to be on the streets as much as possible. And there's nothing like it. When you can sit down with a man that says he's attracted to men, and you can just completely destroy and demolish his argument of what attraction is, easily and simply and matter-of-factly, the reward of being able to sit there and have a longer conversation because he's not throwing something at you or screaming at you and cussing you out. Usually, if people hear you talking well, they're not born that way. But, now let me give you this. I don't argue that. I don't argue with people that they're not born that way. Because before you became a child of God, you were born that way. You were born that way. You were born that way. We were all born that way, some way. And that's why Jesus said, be born again. So if they want to argue with you, I was born this way. Well, Jesus said, be born again. But this is just who I am. Jesus said, deny yourself. When I read this for the first time I read the entire Bible, I sat there and I thought, what is wrong with everybody? Why are there 50,000 different denominations and why is everyone arguing about stupid stuff? Why? It's just so simple. It's so simple. I don't know. So many people was trying to tell me, well, David, let me teach you how to do this. Let me teach you how to minister. Let me teach you. And golly, it's got a lot of stuff in the back. I just want revelation. All right, so they're all trying to teach me. And well, David, did you go to seminary school? Well, no. Why would I do that? So a man can teach me how to minister? Isn't that what the Holy Spirit's for? And then I get to Revelation chapter 12, verse 11. And it says, and they, meaning the lost, overcame, means they were overcomers. Him, meaning the enemy. So the lost overcame the enemy. The world overcame the enemy. How? By the blood of Jesus Christ and by the word of their testimony, and that they loved their lives. They did not love their lives even when faced with death. That made it pretty simple and pretty easy to me, because that encouraged me, because my testimony in this living word, in this book, my testimony compared side by side with the blood of my Lord and Savior. Side by side. Jesus said we are to be fishers of men, right? We catch them, he cleans them. It's that simple. How do we catch them? The power of our testimony. And then he cleans them. The power of the blood. It's also simple. It really is. I don't understand all the nonsense. But it's so simple. I know two families. One, the father actually had to cut the rope that his son had around his neck. He passed out when he was trying to take his life. They were going to put the boy in a hospital by recommendation from his Christian counselor. They didn't, and he doesn't need to be in the hospital now. And he's no longer crying in daddy's arms, but this is just who I am. Because now he understands who he is, and what he is, and who he was created to be. Another one is a little girl who would cut herself constantly and cry to her parents, this is just who I am. You have to accept me. And then her family left the church. They had to leave the church. They said, well, guess what? How is my God going to allow my child to go through this? Everything's for a purpose. Everything's for a purpose. This young lady, she's getting the help she needs. She's getting good help from some very good Christian people. And there's hope for her. That's what I represent. And that's what all of us should represent to everybody around us, because I'm not patting myself on the back, but let me tell you, I can show you physical fruit from doing what Jesus the Christ has commissioned me to do. You know, our commission is real easy. It's twofold. Evangelize, disciple. Simple. It's that easy. The living word right here, it is not as difficult as everybody tries to make it out to be. It is not. You don't need to go to college and all this other stuff to learn what it means, and you don't need to break down the Greek and the Aramaic and all this other stuff. All you have to do is start reading it with spiritual eyes, and now your traditional, already learned, taught eyes. Because I wasn't even a Christian, and in the first year or two of my walk, I realized I had traditional, already learned, taught eyes just from being in society. I already had things that I thought and believed just because I was in society. So I'll keep you here all night, but I'm not going to do that because, you know, we out in the middle of nowhere. And I want to get back to my hotel. No, you know what? My only heart's desire is that everybody establish relationships with those that they come into contact with. And of course, you're going to have agents of the devil that are going to hate on you and come at you strong and come at you hard. And I felt pretty good when I turned the corner and I didn't see any rainbows and I didn't see any signs outside. And I was like, okay, they're not here. But you know what? I didn't really expect them to be. they don't show up for me. And I used to say, well, what am I, small cookies or something? And I had a man remind me, David, they don't come out for you for two reasons. One, your testimony convicts them. And if they know that your testimony convicts them, they are not going to shine the spotlight on you so that your testimony can convict somebody else. I'm good with that. I don't care. I want them to come because I need new friends. You know, I tell them all the time, I'll give you two praises real quick. Wow, I don't know about quick, but they're praises. So, last year at the Pride Parade, I was standing in the crowd, and there was a man standing on the side of by the bridge, and he had a big sign that said, homosexuality is a sin, you know, like they're all going to burn in hell or something, and he's holding it up, and he has a cigarette in his hand. And this homosexual walks by and says, smoking's a sin too, fat boy, and so's gluttony. And I'm standing in the crowd, and I'm like, huh. So I chased this young man down, and I'm like, wait a minute. You said smoking's a sin too. You know homosexuality is a sin. He's like, so? So me and him sat down on that concrete and talked for about an hour, 45 minutes an hour. And I started going and picking him up twice a week, 3 times a week, taking him to lunch. We'd go to the park. We'd hang out. He would share. He would cry. I would embrace him. I would hold him. And I knew that to people in the park, they just knew we were lovers. They were probably thinking, well, what's this old man doing with this young boy? But I didn't care because it was all about him. It was all about establishing a relationship with him and teaching him intimacy. I would share, I would cry, and he got comfortable enough to reach out and hug me and hold me when I cried. And he had told me the story. He was 18 when his parents said, well, now that you're 18, you can't live like that, not under this roof, so you either change or you go. And he left. He went to Columbus. About 4 years he was in Columbus. He knew the clubs, the prostitution, the drugs, the alcohol, because that's all a part of that world. It's like a given. And so about 5 months into our relationship, he calls me up and says, David, I want to go home. I said, well, you can't. He says, well, I can if I don't want to be a homosexual, right? I said, well, yeah. He says, well, I've already called my mom, talked to my dad, and I'm going home because I don't want to be a homosexual. He said, would you take me? And I said, yeah. And I'm driving him home, and he lived in Steubenville, and I'm driving up that way. And I looked at him and I said, Jay, what happened? And he says, you. I said, not me, Jesus. He said, no, David, you. You showed me that I could have a close personal relationship with a man, and I didn't have to have sex with you. He said, I'm going to be honest with you. I had every intention on trying to have sex with you because I was going to pull you back. He said, but it didn't work out like that. Then he called me up in December and said, I have to see you. And I met him halfway, and I said, what's up? And he says, you remember the first words you said to me when the first time we had lunch? I was like, no. He says, you told me I don't want to be your friend. I want to be your brother. I said, okay. He says, you told me that if for 1 minute you think that you're not going to be able to be my brother, that you will cut me off and move on, wash your hands of me and be done. It's okay. I said, well, that was all the Holy Spirit, because I wouldn't have told you that, because I wouldn't have wanted you to run away, and I wanted to be nice to you. But that was it. And he wanted to see me face to face and tell me that he was my brother, and that he was in a good church. He's got a good pastor. His family's amazing. You know, I've spent time with them when I was here. And the other praise, not so quick, is my denture broke. I was pretty ticked off that my denture broke because I was on my way to do an ex-drag queen story hour with a youth group in a Pickerington church. And I didn't care. I stopped at Speedway, got me some crazy glue, glued it back together, popped it in my mouth when I got in the parking lot, and it was all right. So then my brother passes away, and on the way to New Jersey with my mom, it just broke in like 3 or 4 different pieces. Just came apart. I wasn't biting nothing, chewing nothing, nothing. So now I'm really ticked off, because now I don't have no teeth, and I'm going through all this stuff. So I get all the way back to Ohio, and I go to the dental clinic, and I walk in, and the receptionist is a transgender. And all I can think is, David, don't say nothing to him, because you need all these appointments you can get so you can get some teeth. I'm also thinking you're real funny, but I'm just nice to him. And then I go back for my next appointment, and now he starts flirting with me, and I'm really thinking, like, this is really odd. So one day, I came out, I was making my appointment, and he's messing with his mascara, and he goes, sometimes I hate being a girl. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I leaned over the counter, I said, so stop. And he looked at me, and he goes, it's not that easy. I said, yeah, it is. And he says, look, it took me a long time to get to where I'm at. It's not that easy. I said, look, the man you've been flirting with for all these weeks used to be transgender. And I'll tell you what, when I was transgender, I said, I wouldn't have known I was a man sitting behind that desk. So it's that easy. And he said, interesting. Well, that was a Monday. Well, Tuesday afternoon, I was heading to Marysville. I was going to speak at a men's group. And my phone rings. I never answer my phone if I don't recognize the number, but I answered it because I thought it might be one of the guys from the men's group, making sure I knew where I was going. So I answered the phone, and it's his voice. And he says, I'm calling to confirm your appointment for... I said, hold up. I said, we just made this appointment yesterday, and you do not confirm appointments 2 weeks at a time. I said, is there something you want to talk about? And he said, you talk, I'll listen. And I poured into him. I poured into him what had been poured into me ever so freely, so that I could pour it out into somebody. And as I poured it into him and poured life into him, and I spoke about so many different things, when I talked about being molested, he resonated with it. When I talked about no father, he resonated with it. When I talked about prostitution, he resonated with it. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, the only place I could find any form of happiness was in being who I wasn't. And he said, interesting. Well, our conversation ended because he was at work, and I went to the men's group, and I was encouraged when I got there. I couldn't wait to tell everybody that story. And I went back and I got my teeth, and first I gotta tell you, when I first went there and saw him, I went in the back, and the nurse said, did the young lady at the front desk give you any paperwork? I said, well, I must have went to the wrong front desk because there's no young lady up there. And she looked at me and she says, Bella's a woman. I said, no, he's a man. I said, and he's going to die in his sin. I said, you may be held responsible for it too, for not telling him he's a man. That's right. And she walked away and didn't say another word. And then I got to meet the dentist who claimed to be a Christian. And I asked the dentist, I said, well, what do you do about the young man up at the front desk? And the dentist said to me, I try to avoid that person. Good old Christian sleeping church, right? Try to avoid him. You can't even say him, but say that person. Building careers. So I get my teeth and I come out and I smile at him. And he goes, nice. And so I said, I look around and say, hey, nobody's around. What's your name? He said, Bella. I said, no. What's your name? he says, I don't use that name anymore. That person doesn't exist. I said, well, you better hope that that person still exists. I said, because I'm trying to pray to my God for you. I says, and I'm not going to pray for you under a name that he doesn't recognize. What's your name? And you could almost see the light bulb go off. And he went, Brian. I said, okay, Brian. And he looks around. I said, don't worry, I'm not going to walk in here and say, hey, Brian, what's up? That's not going to happen. I said, but I'm not going to call you Double either. I said, because that's not your name. And that was it. Sadly, I haven't been back. And I haven't received any more phone calls. But that may not be, my job is done. Plant and we water. Only the Lord can cause the increase. See, there's a problem. We always want to get in his way. We try to take the pen out of his hand and finish writing the story. And it never works when we do that. But I want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank Melissa. It's been a pleasure to meet you. And gosh, everybody, thank you. And of course, Sarah for leaving.
Yes.
So thank you, and just know that, because I don't know anybody that is not touched by this issue. We have family members, neighbors, co-workers, friends, or we all know somebody that's trapped in the deception, whether it be the actual deception or the deception of just loving them and all they're doing. We have to let them know that what they're doing is loving them straight to death, loving them to death, straight to hell. You know, if we don't address it, and that don't mean that we beat them in the head with scripture, because the natural man receives not things of the spirit. So all you have to do is speak to them, speak matter-of-factly, and win their own arguments. Just win their arguments, because their arguments make no sense. Their arguments are, and it's not even their arguments. They're regurgitating what they've already been fed by some other organization, most likely. So it's not their argument. So just destroy their arguments, establish a relationship with them. I'm telling you, watch them grow. Watch them come out of that darkness. And whether it be little by little or all at once, they'll come out. But we need to start establishing relationships with them so that we can preach to them. Because we can't preach to them until we do. Thank you guys and gals.
Yeah. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.